assist the migration of species from one part of the planet to another in order to protect them. So these are the sorts of discussions that are taking place in the Anthropocene. The question is, how do you put that dynamic perception of nature into something sensible, concrete, actionable in the context of SDGs? I know it's a big question, but I think it's a very important one. If you're not doing that, you're not fully acknowledging what the Anthropocene implies for this discussion. So just to sum up, 3 very simple but big and difficult questions. I think we need to rephrase planetary boundaries. I think planetary boundaries is a useful scientific framework to discuss the risk of global nonlinear change. But I'm asking myself what the most effective way politically would be to get Earth system science insights into this process. I'm not sure planetary boundaries is the one. But let's discuss that. The second point, good governance. Yes, good governance is nice. No one likes corruption, right? But if you're talking about environmental targets, if you're talking about managing ecological systems, you need to think more about adaptive governance, bottom-up governance, focus on learning, flexibility, co-management. And then the third point, let's make sure that environmental targets in the SDGs and in the process of setting up the SDGs acknowledge that we are in a transition phase in the history of land. It's the Anthropocene. It's very hard to use and think about conventional conservation or protection strategies in that context. Thank you.
So before moving forward, if there's any clarification question you might have, please raise your hand and ask at this point. We have a discussion later on, but if your question is related to clarification, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you, Victor. So you touched upon many important issues, but many issues are related to also the theme of this entire conference. So the planetary boundary issue is also related to how science should communicate with policymakers and what should be the language that is appropriate for policymakers. Planetary boundary is useful for science, but that is not necessarily applied to policy world. And that also question also leads to another set of questions about interdisciplinary discussion between science, natural science, and social sciences. So we will get back to the point that is raised by Victor's presentation later. But now I would like to invite the next speaker, Lawrence Tubiana. She's the Director of Institute for Sustainable Development and International Relations, Italy, in Sciences Po, with Sciences Po. And also, more importantly, probably in the context of this semi-plenary, she's also co-chair of United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So she has a very deep insight, I think, onto this topic.
Thank you, Dominique. I wasn't planning to talk about the Sustainable Development Solution Network as Jeff Sachs should have done that this morning. So I will introduce elements, of course, of why we launched such an initiative. And it's very much around, I think, the last phrase of Victor's, that how we can create a learning process that really reframes the way we see governance. Above all, when we are talking about such integrated issues like sustainable development goals. But again, listening to Pamela, the complexity of the system is, of course, really asking question of how really we can fit in all these complex considerations compensation mechanisms. My points at that stage is a way to put an interrogation on really are sustainable development goals one of the main outcomes of the Rio Plus 20 conference a new pathway? Is that really something that will move things forward, or it's a way of finally recognizing that we are not able to set an architecture, a system, rules and norms at global level, so we have to do that differently. So that's a question, and I'm not sure I have a response, but I will share the question with you. First, I think we have to understand why these sustainable development goals emerge within the preparation of the Rio Plus 20. And I'm sure in each of our countries, and thinking in Europe is even more striking, Rio Plus 20 was finalized, a text, in a context where there is really clearly an environmental backlash. Environment is no more on the forefront. It's today, even in Europe, very difficult to make the case for strong environmental policies. And there is a feeling, a recognition that the economic crisis dominates the agenda, and that environment is really not as important as it was before Copenhagen in particular. So when you read the text of Rio Plus 20, you recognize that, and we recognize that the reality of international cooperation is really dominated by national economic interest over global sustainability concerns. So the balance of priorities are clearly set in the Rio Plus 20 text, which we know it's a weak text because of the strategy of the Brazilian diplomacy not to have really to avoid any conflict, potential conflict on the text. But nevertheless, conflicts or not, the general reading you have on Rio Plus 20 is a text where national, and I insist on national, economic interests are overwhelmingly dominating the whole structure of the text. And global sustainability comes after. And at the same time, collective action has never been greater, the necessity of it, and the obstacle to achieve it have never been so high. So I think we have to understand SDGs in this context, what I would call the environmental backlash. Why? Something that I think we can share. The system, the global system, when you see it from the failure of Copenhagen and after, and the Rio Plus 20, is really the system where we could say it's back to nations, back to nationalism in a way, the idea that we have less global concern, less global interdependence, and more of nation demand for autonomy and choices. And when you read again the Rio Plus 20 text, is every paragraph, every single paragraph refers to the notion of domestic choices, specificity, special circumstances, sovereignty, etc. So that's not surprising. We saw that very strongly emerge in the crisis in Copenhagen in 2009, but it came from even further on. So back to nation is certainly a way to read whatever is discussed globally. In a way, that's the direct consequences of the catching up of economies. These emerging economies, like, of course, in primarily China, but others as well, has reduced, and that the first of these, now we acknowledge that in the global statistics, the inequality between nations are really reduced. And its numbers in 2011 and 2012 shows that reduction of inequality between nations. But this catching up at the same time is rebalancing the system, but at the same time strengthening the economic nationalism